Well, that's where our new campaign that we've been working on comes into play, the Keep Wyoming Wild and Beautiful. Um, Working towards making that happen is having people work on Play Clean Go, which is the message that go out and play, of course, go do your things, enjoy being out there. But before you go to the next place, let's clean your gear, clean off your shoes, you know, don't take the weed seeds or the other plant parts with you to the next location, and help us reduce that spread, help us prevent new invasives coming into other locations.
All right, we are back. Welcome to another episode of Over a Pint, where we focus on the fast-paced, never-changing world of marketing, told through the eyes of folks that are doing it on an everyday basis. Not a lot of theory on this show. It is all about real-world practical experience, and that includes the perspective from our guests. So grab a pint of your favorite local brewski or whatever your choice of liquid might be, and join us for the show. Today, as always, I'm joined by my wingman, my better half, Mr. Pat McGovern, new biz director at Acedia, a digital shop here in Milwaukee's 5th Ward. And I'm Kurt Lingle, vice president at Celtic, a full-service advertising agency located in Milwaukee's historic 3rd Ward neighborhood. So Pat, we are smack dab in the middle of National Travel and Tourism Week. Did you know that?
I did, sir.
I bet you did. Yeah, because you're a travel guy. And we've had a variety of tourism-related guests and experts on our podcast. Nebraska tourism, Virginia tourism, some of the national scenic trails, the Continental Divide Trail, the Ice Age Trail. So as the weather nicens up, states are going to be seeing more and more folks getting out to recreate.
Yep.
Hike, camp, bike, canoe, boat, whatever. And of course, the hope is, as these folks head out to play, that they do so responsibly. We want them to be good environmental stewards. Leave no trace. Leave the spot the way it was when you got there, or in a better place. Pack out your garbage or pick someone else's up. Fire safety. Put out a campfire properly, right? Bear safety. Store your food properly. All these things we've heard growing up, and we want people to abide by. But what many folks don't think about is that when you are out hiking, biking, kayaking, pesky and invasive weeds, seeds, and pests can hitch rides to your clothes, your gear, your boots, which then leads to a spread getting around that can harm native local plants and wildlife and waterways, resulting in what can be severe damage to food chains and ecosystems, just making it harder for native plants and wildlife to survive. So we've got two guests today, all the way from Wyoming. We've got Erika Edmiston and Julie Kraft with us from the Wyoming Weed and Pest Council, and they're here to talk to us about the topic, about invasive, and also share with us what they do to help educate, to help market to audiences so that they can start to modify their behavior and get on board with what we're trying to do here. So on that note, Erika and Julie, welcome to Over a Pint.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. We're happy to be here.
Morning.
Awesome. So I think you guys were warned about this ahead of time. We do have a small tradition on this show. It is called Over a Pint for a reason. So what we do is we just kind of go around and ask people if they are enjoying something, and if it is, what it is, and we'll plug it. So let's start with Erika. We'll start with you. What do you got for us today?
Ooh. Okay. Well, hailing from Jackson Hole like I do, I had to bring in a local brew from Roadhouse Brewing Company. This is my favorite here. It's the Wilson Mountain IPA. So if you ever make it out this way, that's the one I would do. And I am having it in our glass that we made in partnership with the Wyoming Brewers Guild. So Kraft Brewers Guild. So shout out to them also.
Very cool. Very cool. Julie, what are you enjoying today?
Well, I'm not quite so fancy, but I'm just having tea this morning because I have another important meeting this afternoon. So not partaking, but I am having it in my cool Yeti that we made for the 50th anniversary of the Wyoming Weed and Pest Council this year. So enjoying our Keep Wyoming and Beautiful, Wild and Beautiful mug and enjoying some, Earl Grey tea.
Very, very nice. Pat, what are you bringing?
Well, first off, I want to say, hey, Erika, hey, Julie, thanks so much for being on the pod. Really looking forward to this conversation today. Kurt, we've had some great guests on lately, and I'm kind of inspired by, I think the last one was Josh, who was talking about this, Josh Albrecht, and reached into the fridge and found this. I got a can of Miller High Life.
Oh,
yeah.
You're going old school.
I'm going total old school on this one. The champagne of beers.
Yeah.
Cheers, everybody.
Champagne of beers. That's a good one. So I've got a lot of meetings this afternoon too, but I'm gonna whatever. I don't care. So I too am a big fan of Roadhouse Brewing. I do think that the Wilson Mountain Style IPA is really good. Although it's rather empty. It's rather empty right now, but it's a great brewery. So great beer. So I'm gonna plug that since we have folks from Wyoming on Roadhouse Brewing. But Pat, I have plugged these folks before, and I do like Three Sheeps up in Sheboygan. And Saturday, they're having a party up there in Sheboygan for their 11th anniversary.
Wow.
And so Three Sheeps is doing some great things. This is the West Coast style IPA. I like all their beer, but Three Sheeps Brewing in Sheboygan, I'm going to plug them as well so we can throw a little local on there. So anyway, all right, let's get going. So Erika and Julie, the best way to always start is at the beginning. Everyone has a story. All of our guests have some background. So if you could briefly, very briefly, just share with us your individual story quickly, so we get a sense of who Erika and who Julie are, and then just basically your elevator speech, if you will. So whoever wants to start.
You can go first, Erika.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I'm a Wyoming native, grew up here, went to University of Wyoming, got my master's from Montana State University, actually, while I was working here at Teton County Weed and Pest in science education. So I ended up doing what I'm doing in kind of a circuitous route. I came as an elementary ed major to work at Weed and Pest for the summer and thought, oh, that's a cool job. I'm just going to get out and spray some weeds and backpack around in some beautiful country and be outside. And by the end of my first summer, I was like, how come nobody knows about this? This is incredible. I've never heard of invasive plants, and this is so important. And before I knew it, I had a full-time job here, and here I am 20 some odd years later,
Wow.
Still in the same profession, and feel really lucky to have found this as kind of almost a calling, if you call it that. I don't know if it's that's too strong a word, but something I just found a passion for, and here I am, just loving it. So
Cool. Julie.
Yeah, so I kind of have a, I guess, similar but different story from Erika. I actually grew up in Colorado on a small family ranch, historical family that homesteaded. Both sides of my family homesteaded within like 100 miles of each other there. So long historical line there. I actually have a rangeland ecology degree from Colorado State University, and was allowed by Wyomingites. We're kind of a rivalry there to start my first job up in Wyoming. Right before I got my job, I was pursuing my master's in weed science education at Colorado State University, and my husband had just gotten a job in Wyoming and just happened to be out with him a day and met a few ranchers, and one of them happened to be on a weed and pest board. And they're like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I just got my master's. I don't really know what I'm going to do in this little community that I'm living in, but I'll figure it out. And within 2 weeks, I was invited to come to their board meeting because they were planning on giving me a job. So I kind of lucked into my position. That was in a previous county in Carbon County. And then we transferred up to Sublette County, which is in Pinedale, Wyoming. And we've lived here for 13 years. I was an assistant supervisor here first. And then about 5 years ago, I became the supervisor and run our program up here in beautiful Wyoming. We have a county that's all about recreation and agriculture and have the Wind River Mountains in my backyard. So it's a great place to live and work, and have a great team here, and it's a great place to raise a family. So I always kind of have had background in agriculture and natural resources, and started becoming concerned about weeds when I was about 17 years old. And the wildflower patches I remember growing up as a kid up on a national forest turned into a yellow patch of weeds, which was yellow toadflax. And so started asking questions about what do we do about this and how do we get involved. And my rangeland degree turned it into a master's degree studying weed science. So kind of a long path in getting here, but really enjoy my job and the Weed and Pest Council and the things I get to work with my local team and our state team, and the opportunities that Erika and I have had to really make a difference kind of at the state scale and the national scale as well. We've been able to help, give our message to other people at the federal level and in many different forums, which has been a great opportunity that we've been able to do.
So thank you to both of you for that. So let me, I want to get into, in a second, I want to talk a little bit more about Wyoming Weed and Pest Council and the purpose, but I guess let's just backpedal for a second. And obviously this can be a very, I don't want to say it's new, and I don't want to say a lot of people don't know, but as I kind of did in the setup, it's like we do hear about the basics, right? And we hear about, fire prevention and leave no trace, which this is a part of leave no trace, but there's a lot of things we're accustomed to hearing about. This is one that, we need to hear more about. I guess for the average person, first Pat or me, it's like, explain why we should care. It's like, because again, it can be complicated. There's a science behind it, but just break it down. It's like, why should Pat McGovern care about invasive? He cares about, he's going to put out his fire safety. Explain to the average person why this matters.
I think it comes down to people's relationship with the earth, really, and being outdoors and whatever you value outdoors, whether that's fishing or hiking or just natural beauty. The reason you should care is because invasive species are threatening that. And there's very simple tasks that you can do to help us minimize that threat. And I think that the hard thing is, and why I don't think it gets a lot of publicity, is that fires are big and catastrophic, and people, have personal losses, or all the trees are burned, and that's really emotional. And weeds invade slowly, and it's hard to have that emotional tie to them until the places that you liked over the course of maybe 20 years are invaded and are forever changed, really. And so it's a slow invasion and a slow impact, but the things that can be done are very, very simplistic to help us in the spread. But I think it all relates to your threat, your emotional tie to the land.
And weeds aren't sexy. You get talking about the large carnivores and ungulates and all the wildlife. Those are the things that get the attention, and people forget the building blocks for those as the plant life and the diversity in the ecosystem to have a healthy place for that wildlife to thrive. And so I think that, just like Julie said, it's slow, it's a little more out of sight. And so that makes it harder for people to relate to what's happening.
Interesting.
Is that, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I like how you broke it down. It's a couple words I jotted down. It happens slowly before our eyes. We don't, it's like you said, Julie, it's not catastrophic. Fire, hurricanes, those big disasters make the news. We hear about them. And that makes a lot of sense. And Erika, to your point, it's not sexy, but it's really important. Is that also, are you seeing it? That would make sense from like Pat's perspective and my perspective, that maybe we're not hearing about it. What's your take on, because obviously there's a lot of organizations out there, like, whether it's the National Park Service or it's state tourisms, where are they at in terms of like really championing this type of message?
I think they're better off than they were when Eric and I started our careers 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. It was a really hard push with people to educate them about invasive species within the agencies and our partners. I think certain pests, certain weeds, certain invaders draw more attention than others. They act quickly. So we have like the quagga mussels that are impacting lakes nationwide. And that's an impact to power and water, and a lot of that happens on public land. And so I think we've gained a lot of support. There's a lot more emphasis being put on it. I think we still have a lot of room to grow, but I think within agencies, we're supported very well out west because we have mass landscapes with public land. And so really, like my county's 80% public land. They are our major landowner, but it's different no matter where you're at. And I think that those changes make it really challenging to get everybody on board in an equal way. And so I know Eric and I are fortunate. We live in places that we have a lot of public land. We have good cooperatives we work with, but we have friends across, even on the other side of the state, the land ownership is very different. And so there you're targeting private lands and trying to deal with different folks and different issues than what we have. So I think it just kind of depends on where you're at and the values of the people that you're working with.
Okay. So we get a sense now as we're starting to build this story out, where we get a sense of who you are. We get a sense of why this topic matters. But I'd be remiss before we get too far in the conversation. And I know it can get a little, I don't want to say complicated, but I'm going to keep it real simple. Explain to our listeners the purpose of, and let's stick with WWPC. Let's stick with Wyoming Weed and Pest Council. Like, what is the purpose for the existence of that organization? Just explain so people it's out there.
So the Wyoming legislature in 1973 actually established the Wyoming Weed and Pest Council and all the weed and pest districts. So we're celebrating 50 years this year of that law being put in place. And the purpose is to control weeds and pests, is the very simple level of it. But we're here to support agriculture and protect our wild lands from invasive weeds, as well as different pests that we have across the state, depending on where you're at.
So as you talk about the responsibility in terms of what the organization does, let's stick on that a little bit. Let's think about audiences now. Let's think about, because there's a lot of work that happens in the field. There's a lot of things that you all are doing in the field, but there's also there's the day-to-day that you're doing, but there's also this initiative where it's like, okay, who are those audiences that we have to really educate? Who are those audiences that we really want to get to modify? Break down, if you could, then in a very simple way, who are your audiences? What are those buckets?
Yeah, I mean, our audiences are complex. Within the state of Wyoming, we have a significant recreation-based state, whether that's people coming here to see our great national parks throughout the state, people coming just to hike and hunt and just see the open space. So recreation is huge. Tourism is huge for us. Agriculture is a very close second. Our vast landscapes allow for production agriculture, mostly ranching, mostly cattle ranching in our areas. There's also a lot of crops grown, a lot of seed produced here, a lot of specialty crops grown in some areas. And then we also just have this general public. There's people that have no tie to the land. They live in our communities, and we have a lot of new people moving to Wyoming from very populated areas recently, and just trying to instill in them that there is a value to the land, and it is their responsibility to try to keep up with that. And if they own land in Wyoming, you take care of your land and you prevent the weeds and you tend those things. We put a focus in the Wyoming Weed and Pest Council also a lot on educating our legislature and our partners within the lawmakers, whether that's our county commissioners who have stake in what we do through funding, and our state legislators and senators, and trying to make sure that they know the value of our organization to take that back to their constituents.
How hard of a sell is that? So when you talk about the ag / farming, and then you talk about, that's one bucket. I like, you got the public, but then you also have recreationists. It could be folks coming in from out of state or people within the state that are here. How hard of a sell is that? Let's just say ag. You've got an industry that's been doing things a certain way for a long, long time. And, Julie, as you were saying, there's, the ag and farming community takes a lot of pride. This is their land, and it's for generations. Like, is it a hard sell? Where are you at in the process of getting these folks to be like, we got to do things a little bit differently?
Agriculture is the easiest one. They know that it affects their bottom line, and most agricultural producers we've been working with for years. I think what's changing is that some of our agriculture, particularly ranches, not necessarily farming or cropland, but particularly ranches, are being bought by non-traditional folks coming in to really purchase open space. And so that's changing, and that's a different conversation, because they don't necessarily have that tie to the land. But homes, people that make a living off the land, they know the importance of managing invasive species, and that is the easiest people to work with.
Okay.
Right. Stewardship is an important part of the agriculture community. And so they've always been very, very easy to work with as far as that goes. I agree.
Hey, Erika and Julie, if I could, I want to jump in here with a question. First of all, that's awesome that this organization has been around for 50 years. That shows a real commitment from the state on this issue. This seems to me, again, and I'm an outsider looking in, this seems to me a daunting task, right? But so my question is this, guys, at the end of a year, at the end of maybe 3 years, how do you guys look back and say, yeah, we've made progress? How do you guys evaluate kind of where the goalposts are and wins or losses?
So a big part of invasive species management is prevention and early detection, rapid response. You find that new species and you get on it right away.
Right.
So one of the things we're doing in our area is tracking where all our new invaders are. When we find a new species, it's going into our GIS database, and we're revisiting those sites year after year after year until we can say that infestation is no longer there. And we focus very heavily, put a lot more resources, time, and attention towards those new invaders, because if we can get them when they're small, that's what saves us the money and the time and the energy, and can possibly prevent it from becoming a species like Canada thistle that we have all over the place, that we will never be able to get under control because it's been here so long and it's been able to spread all over the place. So if we can prevent, say, the next Canada thistle from getting established, that's our main goal. So we're able to track that success by showing different locations that we've been able to knock off our list of places that we're checking annually.
See, that's where I'm kind of like, Pat, on to kind of piggyback your question a little bit, and then hearing your response, Erika. It's like I'm fascinated with how you track, but then and again, this is just our brains being naive. This is your industry, so you get it much better than we do. But it's like not just the trackability of what's currently out there, but like how you even go about identifying something that's like new. It's like, it's just, to me, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that. Like all of a sudden, hey, what's this? This shouldn't be here. I've never seen this before. I mean,
I think that's a big part of why I enjoy the job, is that you're always learning something. You're always learning a new plant. We get a lot of extended education opportunities because we need to stay up on that. If there's a new plant in a neighboring state, we need to know about it and hear about it and learn those identification characteristics. But, I'm a plant nerd at heart. I love going out and finding new plants I've never seen before, collecting those, identifying, getting real nerdy in a plant key and figuring out what those plants are. That's the fun part of the job for me. And so I think that in a way, everyone that is out is looking at something. And I think the important part is be like, is that different? Or that whole field is one color or one plant? And then knowing if that is, should it be that way, or I've never seen that before, is that something out of place? You know, the old definition of a weed, a plant out of place. Could be something beautiful, a flower in a cornfield. They don't want it in the cornfield. Could be a, you know, corn plant in your yard. And so just being able to recognize that something maybe is just not quite right. And then you can get into the science of being able to identify those plants and then what we do about it, which is a big part of what we have to study and learn too. You know, sometimes there's different techniques we need to employ depending on the characteristics of that species.
Yes. But that's a great thing for the public, because the public, we're not asking them to learn what all these weeds look like. We might have ID guides so they can look them up and they can see what they are. But just like Julie said, if they can just realize like, hey, I'm always hiking on this trail and I ran into something, this doesn't look like something I've seen before. That's what we're asking the public to do, you know, to then let us know so we can follow up and see what it's all about and see if it's something we need to be worried about.
Sure. You know, and I'd be remiss. So it's like Erika and Julie, for the folks listening, they're nice enough to join us today, and they're in their offices and they're talking, but I'd be remiss. Such a big part of their team and them, they are out in the field. So it's kind of like, you know, there's so many things that this team is doing. Yes, education, yes, dealing with, you know, legislation and the politicians and just trying to make laws happen. But the amount of work that actually happens in the field that you're physically doing, it's there's a lot there. So let's talk a little bit about the target audience. Let's shift from the ag to the tourist, the traveler, or the person that just likes to play. So in our industry, in the marketing industry and advertising, I think there's sometimes been always a challenge to keep things as simple as possible, or because we tend to overcomplicate things. And if you have a complicated topic, the challenge then becomes, well, how do you simplify that? Because again, as much as you know about it and you want to talk about it and you're knowledgeable, again, we're talking to Pat, we're talking to Kurt. So from a marketing strategy, you want those folks keeping their eyes out. You want those folks out there who are out on a hike or are biking to do something to modify. How do you reach them? How do you then, what's the message? How do you go about saying, okay, we got to get our message out there. How do we do this in a way that's not overwhelming, that they can just absorb a little bit and just start to get us on their radar? Talk to us a little bit about the thinking behind that and your approach.
Well, that's where our new campaign that we've been working on comes into play, the Keep Wyoming Wild and Beautiful. Working towards making that happen is having people work on Play, Clean, Go, which is the message that go out and play, of course, go do your things, enjoy being out there. But before you go to the next place, let's clean your gear, clean off your shoes, you know, don't take the weed seeds or the other plant parts with you to the next location, and help us reduce that spread, help us prevent new invasives coming into other locations. So the Play, Clean, Go message came out of Minnesota 10 years ago plus. And when we first saw that here in Wyoming, we were like, that is what we've been looking for. That messaging is so fabulous because it's simple and it's clear, and there's an easy ask. You know, it's not hard to wipe off your shoes. It's not hard to rinse off your bike, you know, get the mud off before you go to another location. And hopefully that's something that people can really easily remember and just start putting into their practice, their day-to-day practice when they're out there recreating.
I think it's something that we've been working on a little bit, but I feel like we're just kind of dipping our toe in the water, because Erika and I and most of our counterparts here in Wyoming, we are scientists or you know, managers of the land. And for us to know how to interact with the public, we think, you know, we used to say, oh, you need to learn all the weeds and you need to do something about them. Well, the public can't handle that kind of information. And so, yeah, when we found Play, Clean, Go, we started changing. We need to have a positive, you know, it always used to be these bounties and, you know, wanted lists and things. And the public can't relate to that like we can. We thought it was great. but the public can't process that information. So if they know that they can make a difference, make an ethical choice and make a difference by cleaning their equipment, by staying on the trail, by not transporting firewood or other plant materials to new sites, that helps us so much in being able to prevent the movement of a species. It helps them be engaged and think they're helping, which they are, and it helps it be simple and positive without us, cramming it down their throats. And so that's where we really met Kurt. You know, we knew that we weren't doing a good job. We're great at our outside jobs, but this idea of like, we need to reach out to the public, tourists, recreationists, people coming into our area and within Wyoming as well, and do a better job about getting them to help us. And so we had to reach out because we don't have that social skill set, that marketing skill set to do a good job to really get what we need, the simple message to folks. And so, we've been into it, 2.5 years now, and I feel like we're making a difference. It ranges from everything from old billboards to signs to campaigns through social marketing and public, press releases the press releases that you guys are helping us write to explain what the Weed and Pest Council is and what our programs are and how people can help, and highlighting the great people in our organization, I think has really gone a long ways with people like, oh yeah, I know those guys. They'll come and help. And I think foremost, at least at my district, and I know probably Erika's and most districts, is we're here to help. If you think you have a problem, we're happy to come and look and talk to you about it and find a management plan that works for you. And even better, find out that it's something that's not a problem. So I think it's something that we're really trying to figure out how to target those audiences. And tourism is huge here in the state of Wyoming. And people come from, worldwide to come and see our national parks and our open space, and just trying to figure out how to best get that message, how folks can help and be aware.
I want to compliment you guys. That is understanding that you need some marketing help says a lot. And just looking at your background and hearing your background, it's like that's a big bridge to cross. I mean, you guys are both, like you said, scientists. You guys are used to getting out in the dirt and messing around there. To understand, it's like, if we want to get to the next level, we're going to need some marketing firepower. That's well done.
I was going to kind of ask, but Julie, you kind of outlined it. I was going to talk a little bit about, we've got the message, but I was going to actually ask, how that message is coming to life, and you're starting to outline where it's coming to life through public relations and just a slew of things. Any brand in any category, it doesn't matter if we're talking invasive, it doesn't matter if we're talking education. Finding a way to extend your runway is always smart. So it doesn't matter who we're talking to. And this comes up with a lot of our guests. So it's like, how do you extend your runway? How do you bring on another partner? How do you get someone else to carry your message? That's a big part of what brands try to do. So in many industries, partnerships in some way, shape, or form are important because they can carry the message. They can put that message in front of their audience. And so talk to us a little bit about that, because it would seem that there's an opportunity. Talk to us about your strategy when it comes to brand partnerships with different audiences you might have. And
I think that's something we're just kind of tapping into. Erika and I made a big push many years ago when we first joined Play Clean Go and their principles to try to have a positive, way to educate people about invasive species. We went to all of our partners at the state legislature. We had meetings all over the Capitol with all of our, agency folks to get them on board to talk about, hey, can you partner with us and help us spread this message? And I think it's something we're still trying to figure out. Most of those folks agree it's a big deal. We're working on boot brush stations and signage, and they support us, but we're also trying to tap into something that's bigger And that's where we've been needing a lot of help because we don't have those connections. But tapping into people that, you know, do business here, have their businesses in Wyoming, and you know, other organizations like ourselves, you know, we have a lot of partners that help us do work on the ground, but that's not really what we need to target with this campaign. I don't think. I think we need to think bigger and people that can help us spread the message in a positive way. Right.
Like the Kraft Brewers Guild, the Wyoming Craft Brewers Guild has been a great partner here for the last couple of years, helping us spread that message and working on that with their audience. You know, invasives impact the barley and all the things, the crops that go into the brewing of the beer. And so from the ground level all the way up to their clientele, which are a lot of times outdoor and people who really enjoy getting out and hiking and climbing and fishing and doing all of those things, that it's sort of it's been a great kind of way to bridge the recreation with the agriculture by partnering with them. And so that's been one I've really enjoyed the last couple of years. And I think we're just continuing to look for different groups similar to that or completely different from that to work with and help us. And then maybe with mutual, you know, with a mutual way where there's something the council can help in carrying messages as well. It's usually, there's always something we can be helping with that. Same with the way Leave No Trace works. You know, it's all built in, play clean, go, and stopping invasives is part of that. And so I think looking for more opportunities is going to be key going forward.
Erika, can you hold up? I think you were referencing the partnership with the Brewers Guild. So can you hold that pint glass up and maybe just share with our viewers and listeners, if they're listening, what are they not seeing, or what are they looking at right now? Because some might be listening.
Okay.
Tell us about this a little bit more.
So this is the first glass we did with them to partner. It's it says Keep Craft Wild, and it's the Cloud Peak Wilderness, which is up in north central Wyoming. And so we partnered with them, creating this one-of-a-kind glass that for the year of, I guess that would have been 2021, was available for purchase as a collectible item. And so we did this one. We did another one last year. We've got another one coming out here in the next month or so when they launch in June. So these go to all the breweries that are part of the Wyoming Craft Brewers Guild across the state. And they use those during the year and have them available for purchase.
Makes perfect sense. And it's a great audience. And Julie, if I can go down to you, it's like the Brady Bunch. I'm kind of looking, but you held up the Yeti mug. I think there's value. You held it up at the 50th, but I think, you know, we're talking about partnerships and creative ways to get the message out. Can you briefly explain, you know, so that folks understand why that was done and how it was used specifically?
Yeah, so I'll show it again because it's cool.
It is cool.
I think this is particularly awesome with our new Keep Wyoming Wild and Beautiful. But we were trying to come up with this winter a way to highlight the 50th anniversary. And a lot of times we go to our legislature with a lot of asks. We need more money. We need this law change. We need these things. These things would make our program better. But this year we didn't really have a lot of asks of them. And so we changed our tone and we went to them with a thank you. Thanks to the legislature for having the forethought to 50 years ago make this law that not only established the Weed and Pest Council, but established a weed district mandatory in every county and funded those, which is a big deal for Wyoming. And I think really sets us apart, you know, from our neighboring states, in that they might have the association, but they don't have the same funding that we do to keep them going. They have to ask for it every year. It's a tax that's applied, and ours is pretty much it's established, and it has been for a really long time. And so with the mugs, we had those made and we gave them to our partners, but most importantly, we gave them to all 93, I think, legislators within the state of Wyoming. So we did it on the anniversary, February 8th. February 10th. And we had a team go down, which Erika led, and we put them in their mailboxes at the Capitol. And we made sure the governor got one, and we received a handwritten thank you from our governor, who is a big supporter of our Wyoming Weed and Pest Council. That feels good. It took a lot of effort, both for our marketing company at Celtic and Erika and myself and our team to push that and get it made pretty quickly right after the new year. And we've had some really great comments back from folks. Just helps us celebrate who we are and kind of the fact that we're here and we're established and we're not going anywhere, and really celebrate that the Wyoming Weed and Pest Council and the things we've done and the possibilities of prevention and maintaining our, wild Wyoming landscapes into the future, keeping those, wild and beautiful into the future, and allowing for all the great things that are the reasons why we call Wyoming our home.
That's awesome.
Guys, could I jump in and ask? It sounds like you've got, again, you've been around for 50 years. You've got the backing of government, right? Are you guys the gold standard when it comes to states that are really into this area? Or is like, do you look at, let's say, I'm making up, do you look at Minnesota, or do you look at Alabama, or is there a state out there that's like, no, these guys are really like at the forefront?
I think what sets us apart is that baseline funding that is there, that we can count on, and it's consistent, and it has been for the 50 years. I'm not aware of any other states that have had weed programs that have been funded in that way for such a long period of time. So I think that's given us a leg up, and thanking our legislators for that, and for, seeing the need of conserving our wild areas way back then, and then putting their money where their mouth is just, that's what set us apart. And I think we've been really fortunate because we aren't spending all our time looking for new funding, trying to find grants, which you can't run a consistent program for invasive species if one year you have a ton of money and next year you don't have any money. Weeds, you cannot get headway on invasives with that kind of approach. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it definitely makes us feel very fortunate that we're set up the way we are.
Yeah.
I think that's true, Erika. I think that because we're funded and because we're not spending our time doing that, allows us to be leaders in other areas. And I think if you were to ask, like our National Association of invasive species managers, people would look to Wyoming. People refer to us as leaders. Some things we're not leaders in, but other things that we are, and I think that because we have that stability, it allows us to pursue things like helping to pursue, weed-free seed forage, so certified hay coming in, or certified gravel, or helping to establish those programs way back in the 90s that we still use today, and adding new programs to that, establishing mapping standards that, we're our team, someone in Wyoming was a part of that team and helping it to establish that. So everybody, at least in the West and now moving east, are doing it in the same way so that the information can be, can talk to each other. And I think that, we've always been very active with lawmakers within the state and at the national level, and with organizations at the national level. So I think because we are long-term, because we have a good law with good funding, it allows us that flexibility to really kind of rise above just having to look for money. And because our programs are stable, they're not voted on yearly or every couple of years by the taxpayers. That question allows us the flexibility to keep increasing and building our programs.
As we kind of come down to a close here, I guess a couple things I just want to make sure I kind of cover off of. I just want to make it clear to our listeners, this is a year-round topic. And I know we talked earlier about, that's with summer and warmer seasons coming up, that's when we get more of an influx of travelers. But from an ag and from a recreationist perspective, this is year-round. So I guess Erika and Julie, and I'm kind of throwing you a lob here because I know what's coming a little bit, but I mean, are there certain points in the calendar where you say, what a great opportunity for us to put a spotlight on what we're doing here. And obviously with Memorial Day coming up, you know, is there something that maybe you want to talk about with a special week or whatever it might be? That's a nice lead in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think as the warmer months approach, especially in Wyoming, we had a big winter here, and everyone's just really itching to get outside and enjoy, you know, the sunshine and green growing life. I think that we look forward to that time of year every year as it's you know, Play Clean Go Awareness Week. We've been participating in that week for years. Some counties and some areas will have events. We'll be doing a lot of campaigning that week. A lot of people will send out newsletters and just trying to get the information out as people first go into the, you know, the first camping weekend or whatever you want to call it of the year. Play Clean Go Awareness Week is a national, it's an international campaign we do with our partners, but it's a big deal for us here in Wyoming. Really kicks off, you know, kind of tourism here. Weather's pretty much nice for people to come, and you know, it ties into Get Outdoors Week and National Trails Week, and you know, this week with other events coming, and it's a big deal for us. We'll be working with our partners at the North American Invasive Species Management Association. You know, all of our partners trying to really talk to people about the principles of Play Clean Go and getting outside and enjoying, but keeping these ethical things that they can do to help us in the back of their mind.
Very cool. Well, you know, I guess on that note, and I know Pat earlier on said before we started, I think Pat's on his way to Wyoming shortly. So I think Pat, you're just Pat's coming. He wants to play out in Wyoming. But I guess you bring up a great point. You all are obviously ambassadors for what's going on in Wyoming, but you're also ambassadors for this topic. And whether it's in Wyoming, whether it's national, international. So I guess my final question is, what is it if you were sitting down with Pat and myself and say, okay, Pat and Kurt, I know that you're going to get out for a hike, whatever. What's the one message? What's the single easiest thing or two that someone like Pat or myself or anyone who's listening could do to start to get on board and slowly make a change? What would you say? What advice would you have? Tell them to do.
Clean your gear.
Clean your gear.
Before you go out, clean your gear. Go out with clean gear. And when you get done, clean it before you go to the next place.
Okay.
That's whether it's a boat or waders or hiking shoes, bikes, ATVs, your Jeep that you just drove all over in the mud, whatever it happens to be, make sure it's clean before you move.
We have a simple term that's kind of been passed down that's just come clean, leave clean. You know, clean your gear, whatever it is. And that applies to everything, whether it's, like Erika said, horse hooves, your pets, people, you know, so many people that are out and about are just out for a stroll. They might not be these serious mountain climbers, or they might just be walking their dog, you know, but if everyone does that, there's so much prevention that falls into that. So absolutely clean your gear, you know, then you can get recreation specific on how and the details and how often you got to do it. But if you just come clean, leave clean, you know, it's such an incredible help and very simplistic.
Yeah. I will say this, and I think that's been kind of the theme here. It's baby steps. It's like, we're not trying to, you can't solve all the problems in one campaign or in one, you know, this is a very expansive topic, but one step at a time. And I will say this, I personally, over the last couple of years, I've started to, and if this helps other people, these little boot brushes. And that's one, you know, it goes into my backpack everywhere I go. And it's there. It's one of my staples, like when I pack first aid or water. And as you say, you clean after every hike before. They're very simple to use. So we can obviously put some information in the post copy. My final question is, well, it's not really a question. I guess it's the way we always wrap. We always like to give our guests the final word. If there's anything you want to plug, if there's anything you want to say, anything you wish we would have asked you, the stage is yours. Final words go to you, Erika and Julie.
I just appreciate the opportunity. Eric and I have been working in this world for a really long time. And, I think education and prevention is really important to both her and I and a lot of folks in Wyoming that we work with and represent. And I think a few years ago, we're like, we've got to do something different. And then we found the Play Clean Go campaign and the principles, and then turning that Wyoming style and, keep Wyoming wild and beautiful. It's really relatable, whether you're recreation or ag or whatever you are. I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to visit with you guys and get that out, and the work that you've been helping us achieve here. It really does go a long ways. We've been able to work with people that weren't as interested in working with just, the recreation-based materials that we had been kind of starting with. And so it's really taken a really positive turn. And we've seen a lot more people getting excited about the program and participating, even within our own Wyoming Weed and Pest Council. And so I'm hoping that is a direct relationship to the public and how they see us as a special district, and how, we can be helping them help us make a positive difference.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. First of all, I want to say thanks to you, Julie, and Erika. Thanks for all that folks like you do. Obviously, it's a mission. It's important, and obviously, if we didn't have organizations and people like you out there being environmental stewards, we'd be in a worse spot. So we want to thank you. And I guess just as a close, a reminder to all of our listeners and viewers, do your part. As you get out there and play clean, come clean, play clean, leave clean, as they say. And I know that Keep Wyoming Wild and Beautiful is something that they own, but you can do your part to keep your own backyard wild and beautiful too by just following those simple steps. So on that note, I want to thank you both for joining us. This has been another episode of Over a Pint. Till next time, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.